From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
This is the great politically correct falsehood that is taught everywhere, that Islam is a religion of peace that's been hijacked. Islam is actually unique among the religions of the world in having a developed doctrine, theology, and legal system that mandates warfare against unbelievers.
Prominent American Islamophobes like Robert Spencer of Jihad Watch were central to the thinking of Anders Behring Breivik, the alleged Norwegian mass murderer. He mentioned Spencer more than 100 times in his manifesto. We'll speak with Dartmouth professor and author Jeff Sharlet about how their influence on the ideology of hate he detailed in his 1,500-page manifesto. Then the author who played with fire. Millions have read his Millennium Trilogy, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. The books were written by Stieg Larsson, published after he died. What's not as well known is his research into far-right movements in Sweden and Scandinavia and the rest of Europe. We'll go to Stockholm to speak with his lifelong partner, Eva Gabrielsson. Then, it's not just a game.
In the militarized spectacle of football especially, there seems to be no room for the statistical fact that this sport takes a terrible toll on the human body.
As the 18-week NFL lockout comes to an end after an agreement between players and owners, we'll speak with Dave Zirin, sports columnist with The Nation magazine, about the players' labor struggle. And we'll talk about his new documentary that places American sports at the center of some of the major political debates and struggles of our time. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United Nations is warning the number of people needing food aid and the hunger crisis gripping the Horn of Africa stands to sharply rise over the coming months. Aeneas Chuma, the UN's humanitarian coordinator for Kenya, said more than 1 million additional Kenyans will need aid by September.
The food beneficiary population is expected to increase from the current 2.4 million. And the mid-season Kenya Food Security Steering Group assessment conducted in May indicates that up to 3.5 million people will need food assistance in the coming months.
Around 11.6 million people are going hungry in the Horn of Africa, which includes parts of Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. Areas of southern Somalia are enduring a famine, with 1 in 10 children at risk of starving to death. In the Somali capital of Mogadishu, a recently displaced resident described her family's ordeal.
I fled from drought, and I do not have anything to eat because my children are sleeping on the ground for hunger and disease. We get only 1 meal from the feeding center near our camp, and it is not enough for our children and us.
Capitol Hill budget talks remain at an impasse as Republicans and Democrats push competing bills to raise the federal deficit ceiling. House Republicans have now delayed a vote on their measure after a congressional study found it would save far less than the $1.2 trillion publicly claimed. The Congressional Budget Office says the Republican plan would save $850 billion over the next decade, which would fall short of House Speaker John Boehner's vow to match any debt ceiling hike to an equal number in budget cuts. On Tuesday, Boehner continued to blame Democrats for the standoff, while Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell sounded a more conciliatory tone.
I think I made it pretty clear last night. The president's looking for a blank check. We have a bill that is a reasonable approach, negotiated with the Senate leadership, that really is common sense. There's more cuts in spending, and then you have an increase in the debt limit.
We're going to have to get back together and get a solution here. We cannot get a perfect solution, from my point of view, controlling only the House of Representatives. So I'm prepared to accept something less than perfect because perfect is not achievable.
Democrats have vowed to defeat Boehner's proposal. On Tuesday, White House spokesperson Jay Carney and Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said the Republican bill would be dead on arrival in the Senate.
The Speaker's proposal cannot pass the Senate, will not pass the Senate, will not reach the President's desk. I mean, this is the problem we have, is that we need Congress to produce something that is a compromise and that therefore can get support from Democrats and Republicans in both houses and reach the President's desk and meet the President's approval.
The Senate plan is the only real compromise we have in Congress today. and it's the best shot we have to avoiding an economic crisis. A week from today, the rating agency S&P said that our plan would avoid a downgrading of our credit rating. And conversely, Speaker Boehner's plan would cause a downgrading.
This news from Utah. The environmental activist Tim DeChristopher has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for bold action that prevented a mass sell-off of public wilderness in 2008. DeChristopher was convicted of interfering with a public auction for disrupting the Bush administration's last-minute move to auction off oil and gas exploitation rights in Utah. DeChristopher posed as a bidder and won drilling lease rights to 22,000 acres of land in an attempt to save the property from oil and gas extraction. On Tuesday, DeChristopher was fined $10,000, immediately taken into custody to begin serving his 24-month sentence. 26 people were arrested protesting the sentencing outside the courthouse. Speaking in court, DeChristopher reportedly said, quote, "You can put me in prison, but it will not deter my future of civil disobedience, and it won't deter others who are willing to fight to defend a livable future." The Gaddafi regime is demanding NATO halt its bombing campaign as a precondition for talks to end Libya's 5-month-old conflict. Libyan Prime Minister Baghdadi al-Mahmoudi made the demand shortly after meeting with the UN delegation.
The most important thing is that this aggression needs to stop immediately. After that, the Libyan people can make their own decisions. Other than that, we can't have a dialogue. We can't solve any problem in Libya if we can't move forward. But all this depends on one condition: ceasefire. As long as the NATO bombardment continues, no discussion and no debate is possible.
The Obama administration and the Israeli government are continuing a vocal campaign to quash the Palestinian statehood bid at the United Nations. Palestinians are seeking a vote in September that would recognize an independent Palestinian state in the occupied territories. Speaking before the Security Council Tuesday, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Ron Prosor, as well as Deputy U.S. Envoy Rosemary DiCarlo, offered matching positions.
First, let me state clearly, unilateral actions will not bring peace to our region. Like a false idol, the Palestinian initiatives at the United Nations may be superficially attractive to some, yet they distract from the true path to peace.
Let there be no doubt. Symbolic actions to isolate Israel at the United Nations in September will not create an independent Palestinian state. The United States will not support unilateral campaigns at the United Nations in September or any other time.
Both the House and Senate have threatened to cut off aid if Palestinians continue with their statehood bid. Also addressing the UN Security Council, Palestinian envoy Riyad Mansour said Israel's refusal to end the occupation remains the lone obstacle to peace.
We have fulfilled our responsibilities and are ready to govern ourselves. The only remaining obstacle is Israel's 44-year military occupation. Our people have legitimate rights, needs and demands, and it is our duty to listen and to act responsibly to advance their just cause. We cannot keep waiting for Israel to negotiate in good faith, an almost impossible matter so long as the occupier continues to be absolved of its obligations under international law, and as long as might is permitted to trump right.
Meanwhile, in the occupied territories, witnesses say Israeli troops have raided a popular theater for Palestinian children in the West Bank town of Jenin. Israeli troops reportedly broke windows and arrested the theater's director as well as a member of its board. The Freedom Theater has helped Palestinian youths deal with the hardships of life under Israeli occupation by expressing themselves through the arts. The theater's founder, Giuliano Mercamis, was killed in April by masked gunmen. And 12 people have been arrested outside the White House protesting the record number of immigrants deported since President Obama took office. The demonstrators were among a crowd of 2,500, marking the over 1 million people deported under Obama's watch. Democratic Congressmember Luis Gutierrez of Illinois was among those detained. In a statement, Gutierrez said, quote, "The president says Republicans are blocking immigration reform, and he's right, but it doesn't get him off the hook." And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.